could current world events set the stage for what will happen before the second coming of Jesus Christ to earth? Only God knows the answer. But the Bible foretells important things concerning nations that are in the news today. In Israel, 3 huge prophetic events just occurred that may indicate we are in the end times. What are these events? Is Israel's current situation a result of God's will, as prophesied in the Torah, or is it only a historical coincidence? Let's take a look. Recently, 3 events have unfolded that can be seen as prophetic, indicating Israel to be the stage where the Bible's prophecies about the end of times will begin to be manifested. From a coalition of rabbis and religious leaders wanting to expand and excavate the Siloam pool, to the new Israeli Minister of Security visiting the Temple Mount, amidst his boss Prime Minister Netanyahu threatening attacks on Iran and Elam. Let's dive for more detail. There are many reasons why the modern state of Israel is prophetically significant and of stage-setting significance for the tribulation. Suppose you want to know what part of the end times timeline we're in. In that case, you must look at Israel, Jerusalem. What has been happening in the Middle East recently? 3 developments have taken place that indicate the last days prophecies being fulfilled. This is because the Bible tells us this is the platform for the showdown of the ages. Other world powers such as France, England, Germany, and the United States have not been mentioned hundreds of times throughout the Bible, as is the case with Israel. You can only understand prophecy if you understand history. You can only understand the world that is if you understand the world that was. The Bible says in Ezekiel 12:15, "They shall know that I am the Lord when I scatter them among the nations and disperse them throughout the countries." Israel was dispersed among the nations about 500 BC. According to God, Israel would be scattered as a result of her rebellion. After that, Israel and the Jewish people would have to be established before the Messiah could arrive. Many biblical prophecies foretell the return of Israel to her country at the end of time. Nonetheless, we need to know which passages are being fulfilled now and which allusions must be fulfilled in the future. There will be 2 end-time gatherings, one before the tribulation and one after. When the current state of Israel was established in 1948, it not only set an important precedent, but also signaled the beginning of the literal fulfillment of certain Bible prophecies about the global reassembly of Jews who reject Christ before the tribulation judgment. The regathering mentioned in Ezekiel 20:33-38 must occur before the tribulation. With a powerful hand, an outstretched arm, and wrath poured out, the verse described bringing the tribe of Israel back from the peoples and gathering you from the regions where you're spread, Ezekiel 20:34. The phrase "with wrath poured out" describes the suffering. As a result, for this to happen in history, Israel needs to return to the land before the tribulation. This verse shows that the Lord is responsible for bringing them home. Israel, as it exists now, is working to fulfill this text. What recent occurrences have prophetic indications? The first recent issue to consider is the position of Israel's new government, led by their longest-serving Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu returned to lead Israel's government as 2022 came to a close, just 18 months after he'd been ousted following a series of deadlocked elections. His approach to foreign policy and the conflict with and occupation of the Palestinians is by no means unknown. Yet 2023 has the potential to be a turbulent year because his reappearance and the coalition he leads are dependent on the cooperation and support of once outlawed extremist parties and leaders. The potential effects of Israel's new government on the Israeli-Palestinian issue and Israel's regional and international ties are thought to be the prelude to the outbreak of war in the Middle East. On December 29th, the day of his formal inauguration as Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu reaffirmed 2 objectives as vital for his administration: the growth of Israel's position as a global economic and technical powerhouse is the only other item on the Netanyahu administration's agenda beyond these 2 issues. This indicates that throughout his term, Benjamin Netanyahu will be focused on 2 issues: launching an assault on Iran and pursuing peace with Saudi Arabia. Persia, Iran, will strike Israel as part of that conflict from Syria, where they've been attempting to establish a foothold for years. Israel will launch a nuclear bomb inside Damascus in response to this tremendous and horrific attack from Syria, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah 17:1 in the process. Russia may participate in this strike on Israel from Syria due to the defense agreement between Russia and Iran. Russia would eventually join and possibly even lead the invasion of Israel, whether or not it initially participated in the attack. This is because Russian soldiers are now stationed in Syria and would undoubtedly suffer casualties in a nuclear attack on Damascus. This conflict may likely lead to the fulfillment of the Ezekiel 38 war. The likelihood of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations leading to a political settlement and the end of occupation has long been unlikely from the standpoint of short-term conflict resolution, due to both Israeli and Palestinian socio-political processes and policies. It's unlikely that things will drastically change from where they are now. We are at a critical turning point from the standpoint of conflict drivers, the risk of deteriorating dynamics on the ground, and the irreparable end to a workable two-state vision. Even if Prime Minister Netanyahu has in the past toyed with the idea of supporting a two-state solution, the first sentence of the government's priority statement, which is not legally binding, leaves no room for doubt. He said, "The Jewish people have an exclusive and inalienable right to all parts of the land of Israel." A commitment to supporting and developing settlement in accordance, specifically including the West Bank, is made in the treaty as well. Some top members of the government have consistently held this to be their unwavering attitude. These individuals include Itamar Ben-Gvir, a frequent provocateur, a convicted terrorist supporter, an instigator of bigotry towards Palestinians, and Bezalel Smotrich, a persistent advocate of territorial expansion and the displacement of Palestinian Arabs. Now that Ben-Gvir is the National Security Minister, he has control over setting priorities and policies for both the West Bank-based border police and the Israeli police forces that operate within Israel. Smotrich will have administrative control over Israeli settlement policy as a minister in the Ministry of Defense. It is impossible to exaggerate how difficult this may be for future peace efforts, Jerusalem's flashpoints, the West Bank's instability, and Jewish-Arab ties among the state's citizens. Ben-Gvir sent a statement that Israel is the owner of the Temple Mount by visiting the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif shortly after the government was sworn in, despite warnings from the United States, the international community, and Israel's own security system. There's a serious discussion concerning a third temple and whether or not it will be rebuilt. Biblically speaking, there needs to be an event that will allow the rebuilding of the temple, because the man of sin, aka the Antichrist, has to enter the temple and proclaim himself God. As a result, we're now in a crucial period in human history, and Israel is currently getting ready to restore the temple. The Israelites are merely waiting for the temple to be rebuilt for the menorah, since they've already prepared the priests who will perform the job in the temple and have a menorah restored to its original size. Israel's claims in Jerusalem, much less their disputed ownership of the Temple Mount, are vehemently rejected by the international community. Practically speaking, Jews are not permitted to worship at the location by Israeli law, and Muslims, like the ladies in black, who keep continual surveillance on Jewish presence at the location, regularly approach visitors. The Islamic authorities also deny the existence of a temple there. Nonetheless, recent events have helped the temple movement's objectives and the accomplishment of the temple's reconstruction in our lifetimes. The visit by Ben-Gvir was educational and provided hints as to how Netanyahu will have to conduct a precarious balancing act. The visit was brief and unexpectedly timed before the scheduled appointment. Since the new national security minister attended but did not say a prayer, Netanyahu has emphasized that Ben-Gvir's visit was not a break from the legal and historical status quo arrangement. In an area with a history like the Haram al-Sharif/Temple Mount, it might be dangerous to examine minutiae about provocations. Visits conducted especially to demonstrate Israeli authority are a tremendous provocation, since the Al-Aqsa Mosque is seen as the most compelling national symbol of Palestinians, Christians, and Muslims. Another contentious issue recently is that some rabbis claim that the recent widening of the Siloam pool will usher in the coming of the Messiah, as they do not accept Jesus Christ as their Messiah. The ancient Siloam pool, first referenced in the biblical book of Kings 2, will undergo complete excavation and be made accessible to the general public. The Israel Wildlife and Parks Authority will work with the City of David Foundation to complete the project. The site must be excavated and expanded to return to its original biblical dimensions. Beyond the old city's walls, the pool was misplaced and then found again in the fall of 2004 when digging a sewer. Stone steps from the Second Temple were discovered during further excavations. Also, the excavations revealed that the pool was 225 feet broad and had stepped on at least 3 of its sides. Rabbi Alon Anver wrote a book titled Moshiach is Coming, Are You Ready? He and some other rabbis claim that one of their students, himself also a rabbi, was told in a dream that King Hezekiah had belonged to Gihon and that the opening of the spring would be the sign of ushering in the Messiah. Rabbi Anver also makes allusions to the Gihon being one of the 4 rivers which flowed out of Eden, while also being related to the Hebrew word of snake, Gahon. He said another word for snake is Gahon, which literally translates to stomach, Nachash, because a snake crawls on its belly. Yet the word Gihon also contains the letter Yud, which begins the name of God. The waters of the Gihon are where the serpent obtains its sanctity. The snake reference is supposed to be talking about the copper snake that Moses raised up in the Old Testament to cure the Israelites in the desert in Numbers 21:8, while also drawing comparisons with the snake also being the reason why Adam and Eve were chased out of the garden. Therefore, we can conclude that the Messiah is coming from the source of the Gihon, Rabbi Anava wrote. If it is widened, then this initiates redemption. In conclusion, Rabbi Anava remarked that King Solomon was anointed by the waters of Gihon, dropping a clue that the Davidic dynasty's Messiah would also require the use of the Gihon if it were to be revealed. The Bible foretells that the children of Israel will return from exile to re-establish their national identity, which will pave the way for the coming of the Messiah and the end of history as we know it. The Messiah will rescue Israel from her adversaries at that point, Zechariah 14 verse 3. Jews have long believed that a Messiah will one day arrive, ushering a new era of genuine redemption for the Jewish people. This Messiah's identity has instead sparked a lot of debate among Jewish and religious scholars. In response to the 2 seemingly opposite pictures of Messiah as recorded in the Talmud, some rabbis decided that there must be 2 Messiahs, the Messiah ben Joseph who would come and suffer, and the Messiah ben David who would come as a conquering king. We've come to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching till the end. Like, subscribe, and comment down below to share your thoughts.